guys, welcome back to the channel. It's that time again, it's time for another Q&A. Got my trusty coffee. So let's get cracking straight into it. First of all, I want to talk about, in the last Q&A, I read a question out and it was some reference to Hank 8. And I said I didn't know what it was, and I got like 100 people telling me it was Henry VIII, and am I really British because I didn't know that? Just to clarify, in the UK, Hank is not short for Henry. Anyway, so let's crack on. So what I'm going to do in this format, I'm going to make it a little bit different. I'm going to do the same thing, answer as many questions as I can in a certain amount of time. But then I'm going to do, at the end, I'm going to do a rapid fire, 10 questions, rapid fire, just to sort of cram in some questions, and they're pretty easy to answer. One of the things my missus always says is I take too long to answer a question. So that's for her, really. So I'm just going to do, sometimes she'll ask me a question and she'll say, just answer yes or no. So they won't be yes or no answers, but they'll be quick. All right, so first question. This is from Paul J. Sweeney. Why can't a yacht capture the signal from a larger ship, example oil tanker or cruise ship, etc.? So this is reference to internet, from the internet video I did recently. If you haven't seen it, I'll put a link up there and you can go and watch it. It's a good video. It's got a lot of information. Why can't we capture a signal from things? And the bottom will be the crew. So that'll be prioritized. So if the boss wants to use all of it for something, he gets it. If he's not there, or if he's not using it, then the crew will get what, can use it. So it's automatically done. And also there's web filters as well. So things like Netflix and YouTube and stuff will be blocked during a guest trip. So they wouldn't be able to do it even if the bandwidth was there, because the last thing we want is them using it all up. Next question is from Paul Marek. You seem to be into racing. Oh yeah, check it out. What's your favorite? Any F1 drivers have boats like this? No. F1 drivers wouldn't have enough money to own a super yacht. Lawrence Stroll's father owns a super yacht. He owns motor yacht Faith. I made a video about it, so link up there, so you can find out more about it in that. But yeah, I'm into F1. I'm into any kind of motor racing, really. I'll even watch the Bathurst, the Australian racing, touring car and stuff like that. Touring car. Yeah, I go racing. I go to the racetrack when I'm at home as well, when I can. Yeah, I love it. Lord Edward. Ooh, Lord, your lordship. How about people just don't use the internet whilst at sea, unless it's extremely necessary? Ships sail the seas for hundreds of years without being able to watch Netflix. Yeah, it's a good question, and if you're the owner, then yeah, theoretically you could say he comes for a trip. He doesn't want to be on the internet. The reality is, though, everybody uses the internet now, like all the time. So it's not really practical. And also, it's not just about watching Netflix and stuff. When you go from port to port, you have to do all kinds of paperwork which you have to do in advance. Without the internet, you couldn't do it. So it would really cause problems. So yeah, but as far as the guest goes, yeah, if they want to switch off, they can, but they don't. What are your thoughts on REV, Revotion? Would you like to get on board? I think it has great purpose and I'm quite excited to see the results. Yeah, I'd love to get on board. I was actually supposed to go to the launch when it actually went into the water for the first time in Romania. I was supposed to go, and I was at home on leave. It was like the 20th of whatever month it was, I don't remember. And I was going to go, and then I got an email saying it's actually been pushed back for a couple of days now. And it got pushed back, and I was still going to go, and then it got pushed back again, and it was like 5 days in the end. And then I just couldn't go, so I was going back to work. So yeah, unfortunately I couldn't go, but I'd love to get on board. I actually applied to get a job on board because I thought, with what I do and the fact that I do this, and they seem to love publicity, I thought it would be perfect for me to go and work there, because then I could blog while I was on board. Unfortunately, they decided to go with an all Norwegian crew. So yeah, and I don't speak that floofty, so sorry, Norwegians. Question, oh sorry, I forgot to read people's names. CP Roland, What is the minimal super yacht size to travel safely on all oceans, even in storms, and why? Not every yacht can cross an ocean. They have to be legally allowed to do that. There's certain requirements they have to have. Obviously, they have to carry enough fuel, and they have to have the communications on board. They have to be built to a certain standard and stuff to do those crossings. But I mean, I wouldn't really want to cross on anything smaller than sort of 60 meters. I did a transatlantic on a 67 meter. I wouldn't really want to go on anything smaller than that. But you know, you've got people like the Sea Shepherds. I know it's not a yacht, but they go on ships. They go down to the Antarctic, and they go on these very small vessels, and they are some brave people doing that. You know, I wouldn't want to do that, going down to the Southern Ocean, Antarctica and stuff. So you can do it. It's just that for me, I wouldn't want to go on anything smaller than 60 meter really. Oh, same person, CP Roland again. Question: How do payments get done for fuel, groceries, marina costs, etc.? Most yachts have a management company, and so the bills and stuff. Well, actually, for groceries, it usually goes through the agents, the ship's agents in each port. So all the bills go through that. They bill the management company, and then the management company eventually pays them. Fuel and stuff is the same thing. So we'll sign invoices and stuff, and we send them to the management company, and it's all done. So they usually get it like a month later or something like that. Rafe Ademi, can you become Lansic after a long time on the yacht? Yes, well, Lansic, I wouldn't say sick as such, but there are things that happen when you first leave a boat. And especially if the whole time you've spent and it's been at sea, because yachts, they stay docked a lot. But if you've been at sea the whole time, when you come home, you do notice things. For instance, when you first get home, it's so quiet because there's no forced airflow, there's no noises from engines and stabilizers and all that kind of stuff. So it's very quiet at home. Well, that's something that you really notice for the first day or so. Also, you can, when you're at sea and the boat moves around like that, and sometimes you can stumble and you think, oh, the boat moved. And sometimes that happens when you're at home and you think, oh, you know, and for a moment you think something's happened, and then you realize you're not even on a boat. So yeah, weird things like that. I can't imagine anybody being sick, but yeah. Del Cassie, hi, my question for you is this: on some of the smaller Explorer yachts, 30 to 35 meter, they only have 4 crew. I assume captain, engineer, How does this work for trans-Pacific crossing? How do you split the watch duties? Well, I don't think a yacht that small with such a small crew would be doing a crossing like that. You have these yacht transporters for the small yachts, and it's a giant ship, and they just put these yachts on the back, and they go across on that, because they're probably not legally allowed to cross. They probably don't have the right equipment and stuff like that. But if they did cross, then I don't know how they'd do it, to be honest. I think they'd have to hire more people. Like usually you'll have 3 people doing a watch, and they'll do 4 hours each. So you do 4 hours on, and then you get 8 hours off watch. Sometimes you still have to do other jobs. The most I've seen is people doing, when you only have 2 people, they have 2 6-hour watches. So you do a 6-hour watch, then you get 6 hours off, then you get a 6-hour watch. So you do 2 6-hour watches in a day. So yeah, I don't think a boat that small would do that kind of crossing. Hey, this is from Dossman. Question: how common is it for super yachts to be asked to provide assistance to search and rescue or similar things? Have you ever been involved in one? Are private boats like super yachts required to help? Yeah, all vessels are required to help. It's the code of safety of lives at sea. If you are within the vicinity of a mayday call, then you're required to respond, and you're required to help. If you're the closest, then you have to go. Joey Redman, thank you for answering our curious questions. Why do most flags I see on super yachts have a red flag with the Union Jack in the corner? Thanks in advance. Well, it's because most, nations that are part of the British Commonwealth, they have a flag like that with the Union Jack in the corner. That is a Commonwealth country or island or whatever. So when they are flagged from that place, like for instance Cayman Islands, most popular, then they'll have that flag on. And why do they flag them in the Cayman Islands? Because for tax reasons. Arthur N. Q&A, are there any yachts with below surface staterooms and cabins with windows to see directly underwater? If not, then why? Yes, there are. Some yachts do have them. They call them glass bottoms, and I've been on one that had one, and basically the one I was on, I had an elevator went all the way down to the tank deck, and then you went into this little room, and it had a glass bottom, and then it had some TVs on the wall that had like projections of underwater stuff going on. I didn't like it, it was kind of claustrophobic. And they have lights as well, so they can turn the lights on and you can see all the fish and stuff. Bob Dontremont, I'm sorry if I'm destroying these names, but how does an owner communicate to the crew that he wants to be left alone? Is there a code word he uses? There's no requirement for that, because there's a common misconception when I see in the comments that because there's a crew of 35 or 40, whatever, that they're going to be all over the boat and the owner's not going to be able to get a moment's peace. But it's not like that at all. Basically, what will happen is a lot of the crew stay below decks because that's what their job is. You know, like the chef and the people who work in the mess and stuff like that, and the engineers. So they never go on the deck anyway. The people who clean the deckhands and stuff, they will go to places where they can work without disturbing the boss. So there's always a communication amongst the crew. So like, let's say it's 7 o'clock in the morning, the crew will be out cleaning, and they'll do the areas that they want to do before the boss comes out. Then when the boss is coming out, then there'll be a call on the radio. Boss is going to wherever he has his breakfast, usually on one of the decks. So everyone disappears. And then the interior, the stewards will clean, we'll serve him his breakfast and stuff like that. And then when he leaves, another call, boss is going back to his cabin or whatever, and then the people will come and clear off. And while he's having his breakfast, the other ones have gone in and cleaned the cabin, and so on and so forth. So it's all structured, so he's, as far as he's concerned, he might think he's the only person on board, apart from the person giving him his breakfast. Robert McCall, I've just found your channel a few days ago. Suggested a video from Jared Watney. Oh, on YouTube, I get it. And love your Q&As, thank you very much. And my question is, have any of the owners you've worked for or heard of any done something big for the crew, such as sending them to an exotic location as a thank you for what they do? Well, we go to exotic locations as part of the job, so but that would never happen. I don't think. There may be people out there who will chime in and say, yeah, my boss sent me to somewhere, but I don't think so. I worked on a boat when the boss took us all out for dinner, and to be honest, for me that was quite awkward, because he's your boss and you're sitting there and you can't really relax because he's this guy who you work for and stuff. So the best thing if the owner wanted to do something nice like that, the best thing he could do is send us out for dinner and pay for it, but not go. And that might sound a bit callous, but what I mean is the crew will really get to relax and then go out and have a great time, and then he's paying for it. So that would be the best thing that he could do, really. But yeah. So anyway, that night we went out. It doesn't sound like much. People think, oh, he's a billionaire, he could give you all $1 million. Well, he's not going to do that, is he? Because what would happen? Right, okay. Imagine if the boss gave me $1 million. What's the first thing I'm going to do? I'm going to resign, right? Because I don't need to work anymore. I've got $1 million. So he's not going to give me $1 million. So let's be realistic. And someone doing something nice for you does not equate to how much money he's got. So if someone gives you a tip on the street of $10, you say, hey man, you've got a nice car there. You could have given me more than that. So yeah, we went out for dinner, and it cost 20,000 euros for that dinner. So we went to a really nice restaurant. There was 30 of us, and everyone had drinks and all that stuff, and it was 20,000 euros. And he bought champagne and stuff like that. So yeah, so that was pretty decent, I think, for anyone to do that. I like this one. What is a good way to start your career as a crew member? I could imagine Experienced crew are much more sought after than newly hatched in the business. Love your videos, love your videos, etc. Yeah, thanks very much for that. Best way to start your career? Do you mean how to get onto a yacht, or once you're on a yacht, what's the best way to get on with your job? I don't know what you mean. If you mean how do you get onto the yacht, I've got videos. Click on the link. If you mean you've already got the job and you're going, it's your first day and stuff like that, don't do what this guy said underneath. He said, show up naked for the first day. Don't do that. No, the best thing to do is go, work hard, keep your mouth shut, especially for the first couple of weeks, you know. If it's your first boat, you've got no experience, so just listen, learn. If it's your second boat, no one cares about your first boat. No one cares how you used to do it on your other boat, because every boat's different. So that's a piece of advice I give to a lot of people who are going to the second boat. So when I'm on a boat and someone says they're leaving and they're going to another boat, that's the advice I give them. No one cares how they did it on your old boat, unless they specifically ask you, how did you do it on your old boat? And then you tell them. But otherwise, no one cares, right? Because you're not there anymore. So if it was so good, why did you leave, right? So yeah, keep quiet, learn. Always volunteer if they ask for a volunteer. As my dad always used to say, 1 volunteer is better than 10 pressed men. You know, so even if you don't really fancy it, if you volunteer often, then you'll get a good name. Because the chances are, if you don't volunteer, you're going to get picked. Like, well, someone's going to get picked to do it if there's no volunteer, right? So you might end up getting picked anyway. You didn't volunteer, so you don't get any credit. So volunteer, keep quiet, do your job, and learn. Be keen to learn. That's how you get on. Shaky Senior. Really enjoy your content. I noticed your home base and love of Porsche in an earlier video. So in a normal working year for you, how often do you get home and for how long? For me, well, for crew in general, it depends on the job and depends on your rotation. My rotation is what they call a 1-for-1 rotation, or a full rotation, they call it. They also can call it. Basically, it means that for every day I work, I earn a day's leave. So I'll do, depending on the boat, I'll do 8 or 10 weeks on working, and then I'll get the same amount off. So usually within a year, I'll work for 6 months and I'll have 6 months off. And yes, we get paid the whole time, so it's nice, isn't it? Alex, wow, interesting channel, thank you. So working on a cruise ship is in some ways better than on a super yacht. Oh, that's interesting. Because I've just been talking about other subject. Working on a cruise ship in general, and I worked on cruise ships for 10 years before I worked on super yachts, so I can answer this question. On a super yacht, you get treated better, depending on what you do, of course. But as for me, I got treated much better on a cruise ship. So I was an officer, which I'm technically an officer on a yacht, but it's a technical thing. It's not really, nobody really knows. As an officer on a cruise ship, I got my own cabin. I got a cabin steward to clean my cabin. I got to eat in the officer's mess, and I got to eat in the guest areas if I wanted to. I could go to the guest restaurant. I got to go see the shows. I got treated very well because I was an officer, so I was wearing the stripes, and I got treated well by the other crew. So yes, you get treated much better. So you might be asking, why did I leave to come to super yachts? Well, the pay on the super yachts is over 200% than what you get on a cruise ship in general. So everybody who comes from cruise ships to super yachts is here for the money, really. And I don't know how that sounds, but it's true. So, I mean, if I could get the same money working on a cruise ship, I don't know actually now, but if back then, when I was working on the cruise ships and I applied for a yacht and it was the same money, then I wouldn't probably have done it. One other thing about working on the cruise ship is generally, there are a few exceptions, but generally you only get paid when you're at work. So if you do a 3-month rotation or contract, as they call it, then the 3 months you get off, you don't get paid for that. So the money you earn when you're at work is what you live on when you're off. So you don't really get an opportunity to save. So that's the good thing about super yachts is, and again, there are some exceptions, but for the most part, you get paid when you're at home as well. So, Javier Costa Enere. How is it when somebody of the crew has an important event? Maybe she's getting married, a close family member or friend's death. And what is it the usual way of acting for pregnancies if a female crew is pregnant or if a male crew has just become a father? Okay, I'll try and answer this one quickly. If there's a wedding coming up, then you work out a schedule with your opposite usually, if you've got one. So if I've got my opposite, when I'm on leave, he's here. If I want to go to a wedding or something, I can ask him, instead of doing 10 weeks, maybe I'll do 7 weeks, and he comes back early, and then he does 7 weeks, and then we go back to 10 weeks, something like that. If it's a death, then generally, or if somebody's dying, generally if we're at sea, they'll drop you off at the nearest place and get you home as quickly as possible. So hopefully you'll get home before that person does die. If we're in port, you can go as soon as you tell the captain that you've got that somebody's ill at home, they'll fly you home straight away. What was the other one? Pregnant. A woman who's pregnant, she has to leave immediately, and that's because of the nature of being at sea. It's not a normal job. So once she announces that she's pregnant, then pretty much straight away she has to go home. And I think there's a time frame for when she has to leave, but I'm not sure what that is. But it's pretty quickly. Every time I've been on a yacht when a woman got pregnant, she's gone home pretty quickly, like within a week. Question: if the crew is on board for 8 to 10 months a year, how do they get mail? Can you go on Amazon and just order something to the boat? Well, obviously if you're at sea, you can't. When you're in port, let's say you're in the south of France and you're in Cannes or maybe you're in Monaco or something. I know Monaco's not part of France, before anyone says anything. If you're in port like that, yeah, you can. What you generally do, because obviously even if you're in port, you don't have a physical address, but we have a ship's agent. So whenever we go into a port, we have an agent. And then the agencies are all over. Every port you go to, there are different agents. And what you do is you would order something to their address, and then you put your name and the boat you work on, and then care of the agent's address. And then when it arrives at the agents, then they'll bring them to the boat. Chandler, how does pay work? 5 nationalities on a boat, flagged in the 6th country. Which currency is used? It's either US dollars or euros, but usually euros. Crew don't like to get paid in dollars because it fluctuates too much. There's a funny story about that actually. When Paul Allen was alive, so the late Paul Allen, he owned Octopus, right? And he asked the captain one day, "Why is it I have a high turnover of crew?" And the captain said, "Well, it's because you pay in dollars." He said most boats pay in euros, and they don't like getting paid in dollars, so a lot of them were leaving. So he said, "Okay, then let's pay them in euros." So overnight, the crew got paid in euros, but he didn't change the amount. He didn't sort of work out the exchange rate and say. He just said, "Right, let's pay them all in euros." So they all got a pay rise. Kevin McLaughlin. God forbid something happens to the captain while underway, depending on the size of the vessel, who takes over command of the vessel? Chief officer does. The chief officer usually is qualified as a captain. And very often, when the captain goes on leave, his relief is the chief officer, because he's a qualified captain. Shane Drew, enjoyed the video. Do the crew know the itinerary of the yacht's travels in advance, or is it basically ad hoc once the owner's on board? Generally, there will be an itinerary drawn up, but it can change quickly. So we kind of have an idea where we're going. So usually the owner will tell you that they want the boat in. Let's say they want you in the Caribbean. So you're going to the Caribbean, and then they'll say they might say, draw up an itinerary for 10 days, and then you draw up this thing, but once he's on board, it can change like that. Sometimes you don't know where you're going. Sometimes you get told to start the engines and you don't even know where you're going. So Andy Scott, great video. Thank you for saying chief stewardess or steward. Nice to know there are a few guys in the interior department. Yeah, there are a few. Question, on that subject, is the yachting industry similar to my world of private aviation where the interior is dominated by females for various reasons that are maybe best unsaid? It is generally a woman's world. There are some exceptions. I know a chap who used to be a butler actually, and now he's a chief steward on board a yacht. And I worked on a boat a few years ago, and all of the interior were men. They were all from Sri Lanka. But that's the exception to the rule, really. So generally, yeah, they're mostly women, mostly young, attractive women. Not that that's the only quality that they have. Again, they're hired plus the experience. They wouldn't get on with no experience just because they're hot. Ron C. Question, do most people try to avoid the owner or the owner's wife out of sight, out of mind? And is it best to? That's my policy generally, is to be invisible. Yeah, I think it's a good policy to have. There are people that I've known in the past who've become very friendly with the owner, and it works for a while, but then if he gets beeped off, then he knows your name, right? So he can't say, well, who was that guy? But he knows your name, so yeah, it's best to avoid. So yeah. Okay, so that's all the questions I have. Now it's rapid fire time. Eva Tarek, as a crew member, do you have to pay for food and such with part of your salary, or is it included? No, it's included. All the food's included. Also, they have like soft drinks and stuff, and then in the fridge there's also things like yogurts and jam and stuff like that, and bread and stuff, so you can always go and find food if you want it. All right, number 2, tips. How do tips get handed out, and how much is the average tip? Well, the tips generally are for charter vessels. So the way that works is at the end of the charter, the money that's left over, after all the money's paid out, the money that's left over gets paid to the crew. And depending on the yacht, it usually gets paid equally amongst the crew, and it can be good money. I mean, I haven't worked on full-time charter yachts, but I've worked on charter yachts. I've worked on a yacht that is chartered out a couple of weeks a year, and for 1 2-week trip, I got a tip of, and it was shared between, because there was 2 of us on rotation, we both got half of that money, and it was like €2,500. So it was pretty good. Next question, Chip Holland. For your next Q&A, do owners bring their pets on board? Are there still ship's cats like on the old wooden hull days? No ship's cats. Yes, some owners do bring their pets, and they're a pain in the butt because they crap everywhere. What is Mark Dolman? What is your exact job description? Does it pay well, tax-free, I assume? Well, I can't tell you what my job description is because I don't want to really talk about that stuff. Does it pay well? Yes, it pays very well. And is it tax-free? For British seafarers, it's tax-free. Depending, if you're out of the country for more than 6 months of the year, it's tax-free. And that's a legacy of Margaret Thatcher. Next question, Sharon Troy. Do you think Yogi was insurance fraud? Link to Yogi up here. I made a video about this Q&A. I think it was number 3. I made a 4-video series about a super yacht that sank, if you haven't seen it. And the third one is a Q&A, and I talk about that very subject. But in a word, no, I don't think it was. Next question, Jack Connon. Are there super yacht owners who are fun to work with, making friends with the crew and so on? Making friends, no, not really. There's always an element of separation, but there are some that I've heard are quite fun. The best thing you can hope for is that they're polite, and they, and they say hello, and then they say please and thank you. I think that's the best thing you can hope for. But I heard that Roman Abramovich was very approachable and very sort of down to earth. So. Shumi 2020, excellent video, thank you. Of all the yachts in the world, money no object. Okay, which one would you like to spend a week as a guest, and where would you like to go? Okay, Octopus. I've always said that if I could buy any yacht, it would be Octopus. If I had a week to spend on any yacht, it would be Octopus. And where would I go? I would go to the site where Yogi sank, and I would use their submersible to go down and investigate why it sank, because they've got that equipment on board. I think this is the last question. Malcolm Adams. In the RAF, I had a couple of senior officers who were real beeps. Do you get owners like that? So for those who don't know, the RAF, Royal Air Force, I was also in the Royal Air Force for 10 years. So I can attest to that. There are some real beeps in there. And yes, you do get some like that. Some of them are seemingly always miserable and always angry about something. So yes, you do get people who are, yeah, not very nice, unfortunately. But that comes with the territory. So, yeah. All right, so that's it. We're done. Drink some cold coffee. All right, then. So if you've got any questions, put them below. And for the next time I do a Q&A, I'll come back to this comment section and I will look through it for new questions. Let me know what you think. If you've got any comments about some of the questions that I answered, I'm sure there'll be some corrections in there from people or attempting to correct stuff that I've said, which is you always get on every video, even no matter how small it is. The best one that comes to mind is I said something about the seagulls attacking my drone, and then I got a reply saying there's no such thing as seagulls, they're all gulls. Okay. I'm sorry if it was a bit rushed, but I'm in work right now. Well,